Alright, let's get this project wrapped up. What do you say? Now, in the last video, I worked on the plastic stem for those cigar holders. Now, in this video, I'm going to work on the wood barrels and then just touch on what I do for finishing. These first couple of clips, I apologize, have terrible video quality. It's because my phone was recording in a different video format. I'm not exactly sure why, but I promise you things do get better. And so really all I'm showing here is I took those wood blanks, I remounted them on that 1/4 inch bolt, put them back on the lathe, and then just turned them down to the final diameter. I decided to make all of the cigar holders the same size, the same external diameter, and that was really just to make them look like a matched set. So yeah, mount them up, turn them down to the final size, and then in this next clip you'll see here that I'm boring them out with the 5/8 inch drill bit. That's just to get the starter hole in to fit the plastic tenon, and then give me a starting point of where to go from there for the actual internal bore. Alright, I gotta keep the volume in this next clip muted because I don't need a copyright strike on this video, and I didn't realize that I had a television program playing on my computer in the background that you can clearly hear if the volume's up at a normal level. But regardless, what am I doing in this video? Well, I explained in the first video in this series that I was going to try and cover 2 different ring gauges with one cigar holder. Well, what that means is you need a tapered internal bore to cover 2 different ring gauges. And so it starts at the end with a wider ring gauge and then tapers inward to a smaller ring gauge. Well, in this case, I'm going to cover 2 ring gauges, which means covering 2 64ths of an inch or 1/32nd of an inch. And I'm going to do that over a length of 1 inch. Now, if you look at this diagram, you'll see that if you solve for angle A with a 1/32nd inch change over a 1 inch length, it works out to be 1.79 degrees. Well, my device only has 2-degree increments of adjustment, so I increased that up to 2 degrees. So what I did here is, you'll see I'm working the small lever. That's because I have the tool head set for a 2-degree taper, and then I advance the tool back and forth with the small lever, whereas before I was just using the large lever. That small lever, moving the tool head, is what you use when you have it set for a taper. So I put a 2-degree internal taper inside these cigar holder barrels with the intention of covering 2 different size cigars. Now you'll see here that I'm using a digital caliper to test the size of the bore. All I had to do was to get the outside or the very tip of the barrel to the right diameter, and then just trusted that the 2% bore would adjust for the smaller size ring gauge. Alright, this clip right here is demonstrating one of the principal advantages of a lathe. The advantage is the ability to produce a crisp perpendicular angle on the end of the material. You set the tool up, run it along the end of the material, and it dresses the material very clean, very smooth, and at a very sharp 90-degree angle. This is critical if you're producing pieces that you want to glue together, because you need that very flat surface and sharp 90-degree angle to make sure that everything fits together without any gaps. And you know, the best way to do that is with a lathe. Alright, the last thing that I had to do before gluing everything together was to get the right thickness on the tenon. As I mentioned, the hole that I drilled in the wood blocks was 5/8 of an inch. So what I then had to do was to put the stems back in the lathe, and turn the tenons down so that they would fit into the wood blocks. Very simple to do. You just put it in, keep passing with the cutting tool until it fits into the block. Well, once all the pieces were turned and fitted and all of the lathe work was done, the only thing left to do was to glue it all together. I didn't bother recording that because, let's face it, it's just gluing things together. But once the glue dried, the next thing I had to do was spend some quality time with the drum sander. Easy to say, took about 2.5 hours to get the 3 pieces sanded down to rough form. And after that, I was pretty much done with the outside work in the shop. Then I could take it all inside and do the finishing. And this is what they look like. From this point on, finishing these cigar holders is going to be exactly the same as what I did years ago when I was making smoking pipes. And if you think about it, these cigar holders are basically just an oddly shaped pipe is all they are. The stem is exactly the same. The bowl is exactly the same. It just points straight out instead of pointing up. So what I'm doing here to start with is I take this little hobby saw and I make 2 cuts on both sides of the stem. And what I'm doing is I'm separating a bit of material at the very tip, about 3/16 of an inch or so. Separating that away from the rest of the stem, and that will eventually form what's called the button. That's that like little raised up area at the very end of the stem that is used to help you hold the stem in your mouth, or clench it between your teeth. But I make that cut first so that when I go to shape the rest of the stem, I'm not disturbing that material right at the very end, and then later I can reshape that. Once I have the button material separated from the rest of the stem, I have what is probably the most tedious part of this whole project, and that's just parking it over top of a trash can with a mini Dremel tool and doing the shaping of this actual stem. This actually takes quite a while. It probably took at least an hour for each one of the cigar holders. Just very slowly, just whittling it down until I finally get to the, rough form. Finally, I sand. And I sand, and I sand some more. And when I'm done sanding, I sand some more. It takes a lot of sanding on these projects. I start at 150 grit and I go all the way up to 2000. And after I get to 600, I switch over and I do it wet. So it's dry 100 up to 400, and then wet 600 up to 2000. Alright, the last thing I do in this process is I polish with these polish pads. And then the final step that I do is I actually polish with toothpaste. Toothpaste has silica gel in it, which is an abrasive, and it actually makes a pretty good polish. And there's our final items. Waxed up, polished up, not looking too bad. They're not perfect, but they're okay. They're usable. One of them, I think this one, has got a crack. It developed a hairline crack, so I'll probably reach out to the guy that originally inquired about these and just tell him, hey, give me your address. I'll just send them to you as a gift, because I'm not going to charge someone for an item with a crack in it. But anyway, hey guys, thanks for watching. This has been a fun project.